Every once in a while, there comes a product that brings together the pinnacle of available technology. And for retro handhelds, that would be a great screen, great controls, great performance, and a great price. The Supbor Q400 on paper seems to fit the bill. Is this the handheld to get in 2020? Yeah, no. On the face of it, the Q400 looks like a great all-around device. I went with the yellow one since most other people seem to go with the teal, and I actually kind of like the look of it. The color's nice, the case doesn't creak, and there's actually decent ergonomics. The screen is a 4-inch 800 by 4D display, one of the highest resolutions available on a retro device. It's also decently bright and colorful, so really no complaints there. The joysticks are identical to the ones in the RG350M, which are amongst my favorites ever used, and the D-pad is larger than most handhelds, though handles pretty averagely. The L and R buttons as well as start, select, and the volume keys are very clicky, with almost no travel to them, but other than how loud they are, I didn't really mind using them. The force face buttons were where we first noticed the warning signs. They adopt this PlayStation triangle, circle, cross, and square buttons instead of the traditional A, B, X, Y of literally everything besides PlayStation. That should make PS1 games a little better to play, and luckily they do have a pretty good feel to them in travel, but hamper other games. On top of the device, we have a mini HDMI, a headphone jack, a micro SD, a physical power switch, and, warning sign number 2, a micro USB port. For a device released in 2020, USB Type-C should be standard. There's also 4 full-size USB ports on the bottom, so you can plug in extra controllers to make this into an actual retro console. It does have stereo speakers, but it's impossible to not cover them up while playing. Performance should be a strong suit for the Q400. It has a 1.3 GHz quad-core ARM processor, which, while rather old at this point, should be more than sufficient to play retro games better than, say, a Pocket Go V2. Does it? Not really. The reason? RAM. While an RG250M has 512 megabytes of RAM and the Odroid Go Advance has 1 GB, the Q400 makes do with 256. This, coupled with a heavy UI, which we'll do more on that later, means it can run a lot of games, but it doesn't do so very well. SNES games that give the RG350M issues are also issues on the Q400, but it extends beyond that. Even Game Boy games have issues with sound skipping during emulation. And what about faster systems? Same story, except worse. N64 is touted on the Subbor's website as compatible, but performance is very poor, which is unfortunate since the emulation quality seems higher than on the Odroid Go. PlayStation games do seem to run okay, which is kind of appropriate given the buttons. But the worst part of all this is the UI. It controls terribly. In Listview, it's not so bad, with up and down being, well, up and down, and left and right being used to go through pages. But get to the console view, and up and down becomes left and right. The UI wasn't also designed for English, so some of the characters are cut off and some things are also mistranslated. The worst part of the UI, though, is the lack of options. Besides a few settings like button sounds, brightness, and sleep timers, there really isn't much you can change. And in-game, it's even more bare. You access the menu by pressing start and select, but all you can really do is save and load states and remap buttons. You mean you don't like your games being stretched to widescreen? Tough luck. This, at the very least, should be fixable with either a custom firmware or an official update, but it's pretty ugly in some cases. Luckily, if you do use it as a console, you can change your TV settings to 4:3 to get around this. The Supbor Q400, or the Subor Q400 since they spell it differently even on their own website, should have been a good product, but it isn't. It's priced to compete with an RG350, but unless you really want something with extra USB ports, then there really isn't one thing that's better than last year's handheld. Unless the price drops a lot and some adventurous developer cleans up their firmware, you should stay away.